Can you explain the science behind selectivity in flotation processes with the MACH?
Yeah, so let's recap on the MACH magic, or the flotation euphoria that we bring to the table with the MACH. And what is it that we uniquely that we achieve? Well, what we do is we float very, very fine to ultrafine, so under 10 micron size, fully liberated valuable mineral. We're able to float that, whereas conventional flotation will lose it. And in picking all of that up, what we do is improve recovery, as you can imagine, because now it's not being lost to tailings. And because it's such a fully liberated, clean piece of mineral, when you float that up into the concentrate, it improves the grade of the concentrate. So you increase the mineral grade of the concentrate. So hence we're able to provide higher recoveries coupled with the higher grade, which is something you don't see very often in the industry. There's not very many technologies that can give you that. Some do it to a certain degree, but then there's a limitation. Yeah. So milling, for example, if you improve your milling, you're going to get improved liberation. You might, for a certain, in a certain band, you might get higher recovery and grade, and until you mill it too fine.
Yes.
Then once you get to the fine stuff, you're not going to actually be able to float that to put it into the concentrate. And that's, in comes the MACH, left of field onto the stage, because the MACH enables you to grind finer, achieve your liberation, and still float that material and put it into the concentrate. So, so that's the sort of the background to what we do with the MACH. It's now the how. So how do we achieve it? How do we float this very fine mineral that conventional flotation can't float? And I came up with a hypothesis for this many years ago when I first, discovered that the MACH, by accident, discovered that the MACH can be used for flotation enhancement. I broke it down into a couple of steps, and I keep adding to it and embellishing it as I go along and as I learn other things. But probably then with the high mixing in the MACH, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to disperse everything. So if you have fine gangue that could be sticking onto minerals or coating minerals, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean up all the surfaces and get that fine gangue away from our target mineral. And then the second thing is going to be nucleation. So that whole cavitation effect in the venturis of the MACH, those tiny picobubble cavities have to nucleate or seed on something. What they seed on is hydrophobic particles. What you're trying to float that's very fine is hydrophobic particles. So then what we have is your target mineral giving birth to picobubbles as it passes through the venturi of the MACH. Voila, as the French say.
Sure.
It's done. So we don't have to battle with it as conventional flotation does. They have very fine particles on the one hand, and they try to generate fine bubbles on the other hand, but they can't, because conventional float bubble size is 3 to 6 millimeters.
Sure.
With the MACH, we're getting picobubbles, so we're getting we get a fraction of a millimeter. And those picobubbles are better sized anyway to attach onto a fine mineral. You need a similar, for a 10 micron particle, it likes to play with a 10 micron bubble, not with a 6 millimeter bubble, right? So that's if we're ineffective with growing the bubble on, but we wouldn't even need to worry about getting those two together, because the picobubble will arise, it will form directly on this fine mineral surface.
Wow.
And that's probably the key thing. So and it's the one side. So now you've got a 10 micron particle that is, say, it's like a sugar coated donut, if you think of relative size. If you imagine the donut as 10 micron, and you've got these little tinier picobubbles all around it, it's still very small.
Yes.
Right. So what tends to happen, and this is just as a gift from nature, if you have intense mixing, the right degree of mixing, and you can bring these sugar-coated donuts or these picobubble-coated fine particles together, they tend to stick together.
Yeah.
They will form a cluster or an aggregate because they're all looking for the lowest energy state.
Yes.
Much the same as me. I can never have a couch in my study because I'll be on the couch. I won't be in front of it because that's my lowest energy state.
Yes.
So these particles are looking for a low energy state, and they prefer to be together. 3, 4, 5 of them in a cluster. In total, that's a lower energy state. So they're going to want to, just through science and nature, they're going to want to aggregate. And aggregation then is a part of the of my hypothesis, how I explain we do this. So then what have we done? We've taken a 10 micron or 5 micron particle, and we've created a 75 micron particle by clustering them together, like coconut clusters or however you want to imagine it. And now we have a particle that's large enough to play with the float bubbles. We have a particle large enough so that it can attach onto the float bubble via conventional mechanisms. And because that's the reason why you don't float it in the first place, is because it is too small. You've now made it look larger, a pseudo larger particle, and you're back in the game of flotation and you're able to recover it. But the main thing is, and a lot of people, who are a bit skeptical will say to me, why don't you do the same then with the fine gangue? Because the gangue can be like host rock. The gangue is the dilutant. I don't even know if that's a word, but anyway, the gangue is what is diluting the grade of your concentrate. You don't want it in the concentrate. No. You want it in your tails. You want to discard it. So people will say to me, if you're floating fine valuable mineral, if you've got 5 or 10 micron gangue there, do you not do the same with the gangue? Do you not also form the pico bubbles on it and aggregate it and float it and create a bigger problem? And the answer is no, because I'll go back to what I said earlier. That fine, fully liberated particle has to be hydrophobic. In order for the pico bubble to grow on it. It's got to be hydrophobic. And why? Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The particle is hydrophobic. The bubble is hydrophobic by definition. So they're going to want to group together, right? So it's got to be hydrophobic. And the majority of gangue, not all of them, but the majority of them are naturally hydrophilic. So they're more water loving than they are air loving. And if they are hydrophilic and water loving, and if they don't love air, we're not going to nucleate pico bubbles directly onto the surface. Now, hydrophilic gangue may be coated by other things, or maybe there's some misplaced reagent that you put in that can make it slightly hydrophobic. Maybe you will form a pico bubble on that, etc. But remember, we have extremely high kinetic energy dissipation rates in the MACH reactor. So they're not going to stay together for long. If they're not meant to be together, it's like a couple in a relationship. If they're not meant to be together and you apply stress on that relationship, it's going to break. It's going to break up. There's no way they're going to stick together. So, and that's what we do. So we sort the men from the boys out with this high energy dissipation rate. So that the kinetic energy dissipation rate on the one hand, coupled with the pico bubble generation on the hydrophobic surface of your target mineral, you put both of those together, and what you end up with is a concept called selectivity in the scientific world. So it grants you selectivity, and it means you can selectively float the fine valuable mineral, but reject the fine gangue that is undesirable, that you don't want. And it's like there's nobody giving the MACH instructions. Or, this isn't like an RSVP situation. This is just like natural selection. Right? This is using science, using nature, working together with things that happen naturally to create this desired effect of a higher concentrate grade and coupled with higher concentrate recovery as well, flotation euphoria.